The Intergalactic Cadet Academy shimmered like a blade forged in the core of a dying star. Orbiting the blue gas giant Yexor, it was known across systems as the crucible of future leaders, soldiers, diplomats, tacticians, and peacekeepers forged from dozens of civilizations. Every year, thousands of elite applicants were filtered down to a few hundred worthy cadets. Most of them arrived with decorated lineages, enhanced genetics, or battle-born reputations. But amidst the horns, gills, talons, and glowing eyes, one figure stood out, not because she towered, but because she barely reached shoulder height on the smallest alien in the hangar. Her name was Rhea Kessler, a 19-year-old cadet from Earth. She wore the standard gray induction uniform, her boots too new, her frame too thin, her brown hair tied tightly in a bun, like she was clinging to the last fragment of order in an otherwise overwhelming galaxy. No one greeted her when she stepped onto the welcome platform. She didn't seem to expect it. She merely adjusted the strap of her duffel and scanned the unfamiliar world before her. The arrival bay buzzed with languages translated by implants and comm devices, yet somehow Rhea's silence stood out more than the noise. To many cadets, her presence was simply unremarkable. Earth was technically classified as a death world, but most in the academy didn't take that title seriously. After all, its inhabitants looked fragile, soft-skinned, and emotionally volatile. The death world classification, to them, felt like a bureaucratic exaggeration, a badge Earth wore out of insecurity, not merit. Rhea was placed in Squad 9C, nicknamed by returning cadets as the Gauntlet Feeders. It was a squad known for breaking the weak. Among her new squad mates were warriors bred on high-gravity worlds, assassins trained in the poisonous mists of Ashun, and tacticians who could process hundreds of combat variables in real time. The squad's commanding officer, Lieutenant Draven, was a towering beast from Corthan Prime, his forearms lined with ceremonial scars that marked every kill he'd earned before age 15. When he saw Rhea during the initial lineup, he squinted as if trying to determine whether she was truly one of the cadets or a civilian who had wandered in by mistake. "Name," he demanded, his voice like gravel being ground beneath a tank. "Rhea Kessler, Earth," she replied without hesitation. Draven's nostrils flared. "You speak like you're not scared, but I don't see much in your eyes." She didn't reply. Her gaze remained steady. Somewhere behind her, a cadet muttered, "Another Earthling tourist. She'll be begging for extraction before the second rotation." The remark rippled through the line, followed by low chuckles. Rhea remained still. Draven smirked but said nothing. He moved on. The following days introduced Rhea to a brutal schedule, one the other cadets had long since adapted to. Physical conditioning under triple gravity, zero oxygen drills, and weapons training using simulation rigs that punished every mistake with pain feedback set to 10. Rhea struggled in the beginning, not because she lacked resilience, but because her body was calibrated for a different planet, a different set of rules. She vomited after her first gravity run. Her legs trembled after holding a plank for only half the assigned time. During hand-to-hand sparring, she was thrown more times than she could count, but she always got up, every single time. Some cadets began placing bets on how long she would last. 3 days, maybe 4. Among those most vocal about her presence was Zarnak, a brutish cadet from the gladiatorial moons of Trovax. His skin was armored with scale-like plating, and his fists could shatter carbon steel blocks. He found the idea of a human girl among warriors insulting. One afternoon, during a break, he approached her as she sat alone, methodically reassembling a training rifle after cleaning it for the 3rd time. "You think survival is about patience, little human?" he asked, looming over her. She didn't look up. "Survival is about discipline." He laughed, a low and guttural sound. "Discipline won't help you when your bones snap." "Neither will arrogance," she replied, still not lifting her gaze. Cadets nearby glanced up, waiting for the explosion, but Zarnak only snorted and walked away. "When she breaks, I want front row seats. Instructors took note of her performance. Objectively, she wasn't failing, but she wasn't excelling either, not in the traditional metrics. Her scores in raw strength and speed placed her near the bottom, yet her tactical exams consistently ranked in the top percentile. She scored near perfect in threat recognition drills. During a simulation where cadets had to identify a hidden sniper among a city crowd, she spotted the target in under 7 seconds. The next fastest was 24. One of the instructors, Commander Elira, a Veylan with psionic abilities, watched her from afar. She never approached Rhea directly, but studied her through cameras, performance logs, and sparring replays. Her mind doesn't wander, Elira noted in her reports. She studies, listens, calculates. She's not here to impress. She's here to endure. Despite that, isolation grew around Rhea like a second skin. She didn't socialize. She didn't joke. She didn't bond over shared pain the way others did, not because she was cold, but because no one invited her. And she didn't ask. Everything changed one afternoon during a live demo in the central training arena. Lieutenant Draven stood before the assembled cadets, addressing the importance of reactionary combat instincts. He called for volunteers to demonstrate the gauntlet, a test where one cadet enters the ring while others, selected by the instructor, take turns attacking. The goal: survive as long as possible without being hit. It was an ancient method, meant to push reflexes and intuition beyond the conscious level. 3 cadets tried. None lasted past the 15th strike. Then Draven scanned the crowd, his eyes narrowing when he saw Rhea. "Kessler, step forward." She did, without hesitation. "You're quiet, always watching. Let's see what you've learned from the shadows." Murmurs erupted. Some whispered in amusement. Others prepared to watch her get knocked down in seconds. Rhea didn't flinch. She walked to the center and stood still, her hands by her sides. "Do you require a weapon?" Draven asked. She shook her head. "A protective rig?" "No." "Any requests?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out a thin strip of black cloth. "Just this," she said, tying it over her eyes. Gasps. Then silence. Draven stared at her for a long moment, then gave the command, "Prepare the gauntlet." The arena lights dimmed to a moody violet hue as the signal for readiness pulsed across the training deck. Cadets leaned forward on the viewing benches, some already whispering bets, others openly chuckling in anticipation. Few of them actually believed she would survive longer than 5 strikes. Rhea adjusted the blindfold carefully, tugging it until not a sliver of light could seep through. She inhaled once, slow and deep, as though anchoring herself to something far older than fear. Lieutenant Draven raised his voice with ceremonial flair. "Gauntlet protocol initiated. Observer count, 200. Combatants, 6. Objective, evasion only. Contact limit, none. Termination upon first confirmed strike or cadet collapse." His voice echoed through the chamber, layered with artificial gravity distortion. "Begin when ready." Rhea's body didn't move. She stood in the center of the circle, blindfolded, hands loose, shoulders relaxed. She looked to most like prey too stunned to react. To others, she appeared foolish, daring to face 6 of the most aggressive cadets without sight, armor, or weapons. At the edge of the ring, the assigned attackers stepped into formation. Zarnak, of course, took point. He grinned as he cracked his knuckles. Beside him stood 3 reptilian cadets from Argorth, one insectoid with serrated forearms, and a lean psionic runner from the ice colonies of Vel. The starting tone pulsed. Rhea didn't flinch. The first attack came fast, just a feint, a wide, sweeping backhand designed to test her reflexes. She moved half a step to the right, her motion so minimal it barely registered. The blow missed by inches. The Argorth cadet blinked, confused, but retreated back into formation without a word. Zarnak chuckled, raising his eyebrows. "Beginner's luck," he muttered, circling her with predatory patience. The second strike came from behind, an overhead axe kick delivered by the Vel psionic. Just before his foot made contact, Rhea tilted forward, allowing his leg to pass over her shoulder as if she had predicted the angle perfectly. Her movements were not flashy. She didn't roll or dive. She shifted like water, flowing around violence without absorbing it. By the fifth strike, silence fell over the viewing gallery. Her head tilted slightly to one side, her foot dragging half an inch as she sidestepped a lunge. Her opponents, bound by the rules not to strike simultaneously, began growing frustrated. Their precision degraded with every near miss. The Argorth warriors exchanged glances. One of them clicked his mandibles in irritation. "She cannot see us. This is deception. A trick," he growled. But Lieutenant Draven said nothing. His arms crossed tightly over his chest, his expression unreadable. The eighth strike was faster. Zarnak charged with a spinning elbow meant to catch her mid-step. Her chin lowered just before the hit, and the blow passed an inch above her skull. She didn't step back. She didn't counter. She simply swayed. The longer the exercise went on, the more obvious it became that she wasn't guessing. She was listening. Every breath, every shift of foot, every inhalation from her enemies. She read them all like pressure in the wind. No cadet understood how her mind processed so much without the aid of implants or visible focus. To Rhea, each opponent was a storm she had already mapped. She didn't need to know where the rain would fall. She only had to feel the air change. By the 15th strike, the laughter stopped entirely. The cadets who once whispered mockery now leaned forward, mouths slightly open, watching each of her motions as if hypnotized. An instructor from the upper gallery leaned toward Draven. "How long are you going to let this run?" Draven didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on Rhea. At strike 21, a minor violation occurred. The insectoid cadet clipped her elbow. Not a full strike, just a graze from his forearm as she twisted too late. But no contact alert registered. The strike was deemed invalid. She remained in play. He clicked in frustration and was rotated out. As her count rose, the pattern of attacks began to change. They became desperate. Some cadets started rushing in with brute force, abandoning rhythm. But that only made her movements easier. Aggression was predictable. Impulse left trails. By the 30th strike, she moved before the attackers had even finished winding up. She was no longer reacting. She was anticipating. Zarnak was growing visibly angry. His scaled jaw twitched as he watched his comrades fail. When it was finally his turn again, he no longer approached with a calculated plan. He charged, not fast, furious. He twisted into a diagonal hammer fist designed to smash through her collarbone. As his arm arced down, Rhea turned 90 degrees, dropped low, and let his weight carry him past her like he was a falling boulder. He stumbled, nearly crashing into the arena wall. His roar shook the rafters. "She's not fighting!" he bellowed, his voice filled with outrage. "This is cowardice." "It's the gauntlet," Draven reminded him, his voice sharp. "You were told, evasion only. If she breaks that, she fails. If you hit her, she fails. That is the rule. Continue." Zarnak hissed, stepping back into rotation. His pride was wounded deeper than any simulation wound. Rhea adjusted her footing, but never turned toward him. She hadn't once removed the blindfold. Her breathing stayed measured. She didn't speak. She didn't taunt. Strike 35 approached. The Vel Psionic tried a double feint, a shoulder movement followed by a leg sweep. She hopped, pivoted mid-air, and landed with her back to him. Not a single strand of her hair touched his outstretched leg. At strike 40, the crowd forgot to breathe. Draven stepped forward. "3 more," he announced, loud enough for all to hear. "Finish the trial." Rhea raised her chin. Her ears twitched slightly, though no one could hear what she was listening to. Perhaps it was the breathlessness of the arena. Perhaps it was the buzzing tension in Zarnak's lungs. Or perhaps she was simply ready. Strike 41, a fast jab from a smaller cadet, missed by a full handspan. Strike 42. The Vel Psionic returned, attempted a sudden knee to the back. She bent forward, and the strike grazed nothing but air. Strike 43. Zarnak. He didn't hesitate. He exploded forward like a missile, arms wide, aiming to grab rather than strike. The moment his fingers brushed fabric, her body turned like a spiral. She took his own momentum and twisted it into a redirection. His legs lost grounding, his arms tangled mid-air. Before the audience could register what had happened, Zarnak collided face first with the padded wall. The arena fell into a void of silence. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the automated announcer hesitated before confirming, "Gauntlet complete. 0 valid strikes received. Record acknowledged. Cadet remains standing." Rhea slowly untied the blindfold and tucked it into her waistband. Her eyes blinked against the light. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't smile. She simply nodded once to Draven and walked off the mat as if she had just completed an ordinary training set. But the silence behind her wasn't ordinary. It was reverence. And in Zarnak's eyes, where rage had burned bright, now flickered something far colder, respect laced with fear. Rhea walked off the arena floor with no trace of exhaustion on her face. Her breath was even, her posture straight, and her hands still relaxed at her sides. She passed between ranks of stunned cadets without looking at a single one. The silence that had blanketed the training hall remained unbroken, as though the entire academy had collectively forgotten how to exhale. Behind her, Lieutenant Draven tapped his datapad without speaking. His expression held no pride, no criticism, just a lingering tension he hadn't yet placed. He had expected failure, or at best, a brief show of tenacity. What he had witnessed unsettled him, not because it was flashy, but because it was controlled. Rhea had done something more dangerous than dominate her enemies. She had made them hesitate. Commander Elira watched from the upper observation deck with her arms folded, her silver eyes focused only on Rhea. She said nothing to the instructor beside her, but her report was already forming in her mind. Cadet Kessler's performance was not reflexive, it was predictive. That level of neural anticipation bordered on psionic behavior, without any record of modification, enhancement, or inherited mutation. Human by all biological scans, Death Worlder by classification. But something else simmered beneath the surface, something difficult to categorize. In the locker corridor behind the arena, Rhea moved with the same calm presence she had shown during the gauntlet. She entered the debrief chamber, sat on the bench farthest from the door, and began unlacing her boots with slow precision. She didn't seem triumphant. She didn't even seem interested. Her hands moved mechanically, her face unreadable. The door opened with a hiss. Zarnak stepped inside, his upper lip split from the earlier impact with the wall, the deep purple bruising already spreading across his jaw. He didn't say anything at first. He stood by the door, watching her, his arms rigid at his sides. His glare had softened, not with defeat, but with calculation. "You're not what I thought," he said finally. Rhea didn't respond. She removed one boot and set it down neatly beside her. "I thought humans were emotionally unstable, that they relied on erratic bursts of luck. But you were reading us." Every move she placed the second boot beside the first. "Observation isn't emotional," she said, her voice calm. Zarnak tilted his head. "What did you see when you looked at me?" "Too much tension in your shoulders. Your breathing gave away the timing. Your left foot always shifted before you committed. You don't reset between attacks." The words weren't meant to insult. She said them as if she were reciting the temperature of water. Zarnak's eyes narrowed. He didn't know whether to be humiliated or impressed. Eventually, he chose neither. "I won't underestimate you again." "That would be wise," she replied, rising to her feet and walking past him without waiting for approval or acknowledgement. Later that day, her name spread through the mess halls like a whispered code, first as disbelief, then as a strange sort of pride. Humans were rare in the academy, and rarer still were those who made any impact in their first rotation. Some cadets sought her out to ask questions, to confirm if the stories were true. She answered only when necessary, and only in one-word replies. She didn't bask in recognition. In fact, She barely seemed to notice it. Lieutenant Draven, however, had noticed everything. He summoned her the next morning without explanation. She entered his office, saluted, and stood at attention. Draven studied her for a long time before speaking. "You're not strong. You're not fast. You don't intimidate. Yet none of my cadets could touch you." She didn't respond. "You think you've impressed me?" "I don't think about that," she answered. "Then what do you think about?" She took a breath. "I think about what comes next." That answer, short as it was, caught him off guard. He expected something rehearsed, some vague statement about honor, service, or purpose, but her words were tactical. She wasn't chasing validation. She was staying 2 steps ahead, always calculating. Draven leaned forward. "We run an advanced infiltration simulation tomorrow. Recon, extraction, resistance evasion. It's meant for second-year cadets. I'm placing you in it." Rhea blinked once. "Understood. No special accommodations. You fail, you're done. You're not immune to failure, Kessler." "I never said I was," she replied. He waved her out. She turned, left, and closed the door behind her with quiet precision. The next day, the simulation began at 0400. The briefing was simple. Extract a stolen data core from a fortified structure guarded by live sim resistance drones. Failure to avoid detection meant alarms. Alarms meant a full pursuit team. No one had ever passed the simulation solo. The mission required a squad, yet Draven had entered Rhea alone. Some instructors protested, calling the assignment unfair, but Draven silenced them. If she can see patterns in chaos, let her prove it. Inside the simulation dome, Rhea moved like a phantom. She didn't rush. She didn't test locks by touch. She listened to the hiss of air pressure, the tension in hinges. She bypassed a motion trap by noting the heat bloom from a nearby vent. Her route through the facility was not a straight line. She looped, paused, doubled back, even waited motionless for over 3 minutes in a shadowed stairwell while patrol drones passed by without sensing her presence. It wasn't stealth by training. It was stealth by instinct. When she reached the objective chamber, 3 drones stood between her and the terminal. She didn't fight. She didn't need to. She watched their sweep rhythm, timed their overlapping fields, and slid between them like a breath between heartbeats. Her fingers worked fast, and within 60 seconds, the data core sat secured in her satchel. But on her way out, one of the drones twitched unexpectedly. A system lag. A simulated glitch. The sensor passed too close to her position. The alarm began to rise. Most cadets would have fled. She froze, listened, calculated, then moved directly into the alert path, not away from it. She slid beneath the advancing patrols and re-entered the facility instead of heading toward extraction. In the observation chamber, instructors argued, "She's going the wrong way." She's looping. "She's using the backup ventilation path," Elira said quietly. Inside the simulation, Rhea climbed the inner shaft in silence, 40 meters straight up, then crawled between ceiling supports until she reached the main reactor chamber. No one had ever used that path. It wasn't even in the tactical schematics. But she had noticed the drop in air temperature near the control room earlier, a clue the main airflow was being redirected to support that sector. She understood that meant a back door. When she finally emerged at the extraction point, alarms still blared across the map, but none of the pursuers were near her. She exfiltrated clean. The timer stopped. Draven looked down at his datapad. Mission success, solo, record time. The announcement spread across the academy within hours. Cadets who once mocked her now watched her from corners. Some whispered her name with awe, others with caution. She didn't change her routine. She continued to train, to eat in silence, to sleep in the top bunk of a 6-person dorm without complaint or comment. But the instructors knew something had changed. Lieutenant Draven updated her file. Human instincts underestimated. Predictive behavior suggestive of preconscious combat modeling. She is not a fluke. She is dangerous. Commander Elira added a note of her own. Do not assign her to group drills with psychologically unstable cadets. Her presence distorts confidence hierarchies. Even minor interactions shift squad behavior. No one confronted her. No one challenged her to another gauntlet. And in the following days, Rhea received a silent change to her permissions, access to restricted simulations, clearance for advanced psychological testing. No explanation, just a quiet acknowledgement from the system itself. Status update, Cadet Kessler, monitored tier, Death Worlder protocol active. The days following the simulation were quiet, but the silence was no longer born of mockery or dismissal. It was the stillness of watchfulness. Whispers followed Rhea wherever she walked, not malicious, not curious, but calculating. She could feel it in the mess hall, in the training gyms, even during the morning inspection routines. Cadets who once turned their backs to her now observed her from the corners of their eyes. Some tried to decipher her rhythms, others mimicked her patterns during sparring drills. None spoke to her directly. She did not invite conversation, and no one dared initiate it. Rhea remained unchanged. She still ate alone, maintained her gear with meticulous attention, and reported to every duty 3 minutes early. Her presence had become like gravity, unspoken, yet undeniable. And while most cadets simply adapted, one did not. Zarnak had not forgotten. He trained harder now, longer, sometimes to the point of injury. He spoke less, laughed never. His peers noticed the shift in him, and while none confronted it openly, all knew its origin. He was no longer obsessed with defeating Rhea. He was obsessed with understanding her. Every move she had made in the arena replayed in his head with obsessive clarity. Every missed strike, every twist of her body, every breath timed to the second. It ate at him like acid. Lieutenant Draven, meanwhile, observed the slow change rippling through the ranks. Cadets who once led group drills by dominance now hesitated during simple exercises. Others deferred to Rhea's presence even in silence. It was subtle, but the balance had shifted. That balance needed to be tested. He called for a follow-up gauntlet, not a simulation, not a scenario, a live trial. He announced it 2 days in advance, open for voluntary participation, a public test viewed by every active squad. Rhea's name was the first on the roster. She volunteered without hesitation. Zarnak's name followed immediately. No one else stepped forward. The Academy assigned one neutral observer, Commander Illyra, and gave Draven full control of the rules. The match would be singular, focused. One attacker, one defender. 43 strikes permitted. No weapons, no armor. Contact ended the match. One touch, success. Evasion of all 43, victory. It was pure, stripped of chaos, stripped of variables, just instinct and resolve. On the morning of the match, cadets packed into the central arena. The viewing platforms reached maximum capacity. Instructors lined the upper decks. A live feed broadcasted to the satellite outposts. This wasn't just training anymore. This was becoming something else. Rhea stepped onto the floor first, her boots silent against the polished surface. She wore no padding, only the standard training uniform. Her blindfold was in her hand, folded neatly. She stood in the center, eyes closed, as if already imagining the movements. Zarnak entered from the opposite side. His scars were more numerous now, his gait heavier with recent training strain. He stopped several paces away, rolling his shoulders with tension that clung to him like armor. He said nothing. He didn't glare. He didn't posture. He simply nodded once. Rhea returned the nod, then tied the blindfold around her head and lowered her arms. Lieutenant Draven raised his voice. This is a sanctioned reflex trial under Article 17. 43 permitted strikes, evasion only. No strikes from the defender. Initiate upon signal. The arena lights dimmed. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The first strike came low, fast, sweeping for her ankle. Zarnak wanted to test her balance early. She jumped, not high, just enough to clear the arc, and landed in the same footprint. No motion wasted. Second strike, back fist to her ribs. She pivoted, allowing his arm to pass within millimeters of her side. The crowd murmured. Third, high elbow toward the head. She bent at the waist, allowing the momentum to pass over her. Zarnak moved with ruthless speed, stringing combinations together with increasing intensity. Fourth, fifth, sixth, each one more aggressive, each one barely missing. She didn't retreat. She didn't break her form. She remained at the center, shifting her weight like a leaf in wind, absorbing each gust, never falling. By strike 10, sweat beaded on Zarnak's brow. His breathing changed, his teeth clenched. By strike 15, he abandoned patterns. He tried randomness, erratic footwork, unpredictable angles. It failed. She adapted faster than he changed. Strike 20, he lunged from a crouch. She raised her knee and leaned just enough to let him pass beside her. Strike 23, he tried a misdirect, aiming a fake at her knee and twisting for a shoulder jab. She turned her torso with just enough timing to let it slide past her sleeve. Cadets in the audience began counting in whispers. Every failed strike added pressure. By 30, his fury was palpable, not rage at her, but at himself. He couldn't catch her, not because she was fast, because she knew him. She read him. Strike 33, he roared, leaping into a spinning hook aimed for her jaw. She ducked. His boot sliced air. Strike 39, he faked a fall, rolled, and lunged from the ground with a palm toward her back. She stepped sideways with flawless timing. Strike 42, he stood motionless for 5 seconds. He closed his eyes, then moved silently. No charge, no growl, just calm precision. She moved before he did. His hand met only the space she had just vacated. And then, strike 43. He didn't roar, he didn't lunge. He walked, slowly, measured. He closed the distance. She didn't flinch. She stood still. He raised his arm, not in a strike, but in a slow extension toward her shoulder. The air held its breath, and just before his fingers reached her tunic, her body bent backward in a slow arc. Her heel lifted, and she spun like a falling feather. His hand passed through nothing. The buzzer sounded, gauntlet complete. Rhea stood straight again, facing him, still blindfolded, still untouched. The arena exploded with noise, but Zarnak didn't move. His chest rose and fell rapidly. Sweat poured down his neck. He looked at her, not with defeat, but with understanding. He bowed his head once, a gesture rare for his species, then turned and left the floor. Rhea removed the blindfold, folded it, and placed it into her uniform pocket. She did not smile. She did not raise her arms. She simply walked out through the corridor while 200 cadets remained frozen in place, watching her disappear from view. That night, a silent directive was issued from command. Her name was flagged, her files marked. A new note was added to her academy record by Commander Elira herself. Recommend limiting Rhea Kessler's exposure to experimental AI combat simulations. Behavioral mapping indicates a rising edge in instinctual learning beyond normal variance. Possible tactical supremacy within closed-loop prediction systems. Cadet does not train to win. She trains to end the need for battle. No instructor objected. No cadet ever volunteered to face her again. And the next morning, her bunk was empty for the first time. She had been reassigned, but no one knew to where. The empty bunk drew more attention than Rhea's presence ever had. Squad 9C awoke at the usual hour, surrounded by the familiar sounds of boots thudding against steel flooring, lockers slamming shut, and water sputtering through the communal sinks. But where Rhea's top bunk usually held her neatly folded uniform, not a single item remained. Her bed was stripped. Her nameplate was removed. It was as if she had never existed there at all. No explanation followed, no official message, no replacement, only an emptiness that pressed into the minds of her squad mates more heavily than any order ever had. Zarnak stood at his own locker, staring at the place where her boots had always been aligned with geometric precision. He didn't speak. He didn't ask questions. He simply finished lacing his gear and headed toward the mess hall without glancing at anyone. Elsewhere in the academy, whispers spread across sectors like wildfire. Some claimed she had been transferred to a black unit. Others believed she was assigned to a strategic division in the inner core. A few suggested she had been pulled into research, studied like a weapon rather than trained like a cadet. But no one knew, and no one challenged the mystery. Lieutenant Draven received the reallocation order shortly after the gauntlet ended. The message contained no instructions, no commendation, not even a destination. It only said, Cadet Kessler, clearance upgrade authorized, transfer executed, further information restricted. He didn't argue, he didn't question, but something in his chest, something rigid and carefully locked away, shifted. He sat at his desk long after the lights in the training halls dimmed, reviewing her files again. He opened her first combat score, her physical metrics, her simulation logs, and finally the footage from the gauntlet. He slowed the footage to 1/50th speed. He watched her body adjust in anticipation of each attack. He studied the twitch of her shoulder, the tension in her spine, the exact angle of her foot before each pivot. What unsettled him wasn't what she did. It was how early she knew it would happen. She didn't evade reflexively. She moved before the strike began. She wasn't reacting. She was knowing. Commander Alira met with Draven 2 days later. Her tone was calm as always, but her words came with finality. The Academy was never meant to contain her. Draven leaned forward. Where is she now? I cannot answer that. Then tell me this. Is she dangerous? She is inevitable, Elira said, and the difference matters. In a sealed wing of the station, far from the cadet quarters, Rhea sat alone in a circular room lit by ambient gold light. No walls, no doors, only silence. A terminal in front of her pulsed with soft frequency shifts, projecting images into the air, battle simulations, troop formations, planetary scans, alien behavioral models. She watched them with the same serenity she brought into combat. She made no notes. She gave no verbal responses. She absorbed. A voice came through the embedded speaker. Cadet Kessler, do you understand what this room is? Yes, she said softly. And what is it? Observation disguised as opportunity. The voice paused. You're not here to be tested anymore. I never was, she replied. The voice continued. Your instincts fall outside standard cognitive models. We've mapped hundreds of cadets. Your predictive variance is beyond quantifiable. Do you know what that means? It means I don't think like a soldier. What do you think like then? She looked directly at the camera embedded in the wall. I think like a solution. Silence. Then the terminal changed. The images slowed, cleared, and reformed into a single file. Classified, restricted. It displayed a crisis scenario not yet made public. A brewing civil conflict on the mining colony of Varellus 9, hostage situations, unstable leadership, disinformation warfare, no diplomatic success to date. You are being deployed. Alone? Initially. You will assess. Rhea stood without hesitation. Her uniform was already prepared, simple, black, with no insignia. She tied her hair back in silence, clipped her ID to the belt, and left the room as the door finally slid open. No ceremony, no audience, no farewell. She didn't need them. When she boarded the unmarked shuttle, she was greeted by no pilots, no personnel, just a system acknowledgement. She sat in the cockpit, glanced once at the starfield beyond, then closed her eyes. And while the shuttle moved into the void of space, the Academy returned to its routines, but not as it had before. A week later, in the eastern corridor near the physical assessment sector, a plaque was installed. No announcement accompanied it. No speech was given. But cadets began stopping in front of it, lingering longer than necessary. Some touched it. Others stood in quiet contemplation. The plaque read, Rhea Kessler, Gauntlet Record, 43 out of 43. Fear is noise. Discipline is silence. No one mocked anymore. No one laughed. The youngest cadets memorized her name before they memorized protocol. Instructors began referencing her in lectures, not as an example of strength, but as an embodiment of presence. She became part of the Academy's mythos, not a hero, Not a legend, but a standard. Far beyond the orbit of Yexor, the shuttle carrying Rhea descended into a world of fog and fractured command. She stepped onto the soil of Varellus 9 without backup, without fear. She wore no weapons, only a quiet gaze, and the knowledge that the predators here would strike first, and miss. Back at the academy, someone asked Zarnak, during a late training session, what she had said to him before the final strike. He paused, remembering that silence, how close his hand had come, how effortlessly she had turned away. She didn't say anything, he answered. But I heard something, he added after a moment. It was like, she already forgave me before I failed. The instructor frowned. Forgave you for what? Zarnak looked down at his fists. For not seeing her sooner. The academy kept her file open under the highest clearance, but no one added to it again, because from that point forward, Rhea Kessler stopped being a student and started becoming a force.